my man, Josh Gangaware on the podcast. Josh, I've been looking forward to this for a while because of how we met one another. You're like one of the first people, not even one of the first people that I met in my classes here in South Florida as we started grad school, but probably one of the first people I really like connected with and talked to, especially in the fitness field and industry. And, now it's crazy as I look back, that's like well over a decade ago now. And, you know, we've both been kind of growing in the South Florida fitness community and, navigating, building our businesses and lives, and now building our families, as I know you have some young ones, even a younger one than I do at the moment.
That's right.
But I'm pumped to have you on here, man. I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me.
Yeah, man. Same too. When you reached out, I was really looking forward to this. And when you did, it kind of did the same thing. Like it brought me back to when we met, because same thing. Like I think I'd moved to South Florida, I don't know, like a week or two before classes started, and I didn't know anyone down here, right? So, kind of the same thing. Like you were also like, it helped that the first class that we had was like 4 people. And so you and me were like the only ones who were like somewhat athletic and seemingly like kind of into fitness. So, that obviously helped kind of spur the relationship that we have. But, it's also funny too. And like, at that time, like you had already done some personal training and you were really kind of like really starting to grow yours. And I was kind of new, at least on this side of the game. Like I was really kind of gearing more towards like coaching, because I was coming from like a baseball coaching background, and not so much on the fitness side. But now it's been awesome seeing your growth and your transitions. And like you said, like having us kind of start and grow our families around the same time, like looking back on all of that over the decade ago. Yeah, man, it's been pretty awesome.
And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Graves, my girl, Dr. Graves, I'm pretty sure that was the entrepreneurship class, was it not? I think it was like entrepreneurship and health and fitness, which is why there was like 4 people in there.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
But again, now that I fast forward in time, now I'm not so surprised that that's where we met one another. There's just like maybe an interest, even though I had no clue. Maybe I still have no idea what entrepreneurship is, truthfully. But it's like there's something interesting about that. So I think it's cool that we've, kind of followed similar paths throughout training.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something actually I didn't think about until we just brought it up. But like I didn't really think about like the entrepreneurship side, even though we took that class. Like obviously that probably helped kind of build some of those thoughts around it. But the fact that we both did kind of follow that direction, like that is pretty awesome and pretty wild at the same time. Like, because again, like that was so long ago, and it sounds like you were kind of in the same position that I was in, where, I took that class because I needed another class, and I was like, all right, I don't really know what I want to do in this world, but like, I don't know, let's see if this entrepreneurship thing is something that I might be interested in.
Well, and I feel like the longer that we go, right, and I say that we, this world of coaches and trainers and people who make it beyond year 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and then 13 to 15, right? All of a sudden the funnel keeps getting smaller and smaller. And so I say that because I find that the longer that we keep going, the smaller the net of coaches and trainers really kind of gets, and people, know each other. I'm sure without even knowing, I'm sure we follow similar people and probably even connect with and talk to similar people who are like from different states, different countries, so for me, that's got to be one of my favorite things about the industry. But I want to jump in. Like you mentioned, I know you were kind of just getting started with training when we first met, however many years ago now, 13 plus, but you're 13 years in to training. And I've talked about it here on the podcast before. I believe that over time we go through seasons, right? Seasons of life, seasons of how we feel about coaching and training, right? The evolution. So you're 13 years in. What are you fired up and passionate about right now, especially when it comes to training clients? Because I know that's what your business is built around. So what are you fired up about?
Yeah. So a lot of mine recently has been really trying to find a way to kind of meld together personal development and the fitness side of things. So, I've kind of one way or another kind of found myself training a lot of higher level executives, entrepreneurs, that kind of stuff. And so how can we make the fitness side of things really work alongside what's happening from the personal development side? Because I know like a lot of people that I follow and have followed in the past, the personal development side is what really comes at the forefront. And then like fitness is kind of like takes a back seat. It's in there somewhere, but it's obviously not the main point. And so for me, it's how can I kind of flip that around? How can we make fitness like the thing that they are probably missing in their life? And then how can we use that fitness in order to help grow them to become, better in their positions at work? How can we grow them to be more confident, regain their body, their health, for some people, athleticism? And then how can we kind of transition that into how can they just live a better life with their spouses, their kids, and what they do outside of work? And so that's been the big thing for me lately is how can we really use fitness in order to help grow that side of it?
And how do you feel? I feel like it's somewhat of almost like a trigger word for especially coaches and trainers, good or bad. How do you feel about the term life coach?
You're right. I mean, I think that is like a big trigger word. And I think it kind of comes down to really like the way that you look at what that is. Because if you would have asked me this question probably even like 6 months ago, I'm like, hell no.
Like, no, come on, that's like, it sounds like Tony Robbins, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which, there's nothing wrong with him at all. Like,
no.
But if we really look at, even not just with what I'm trying to do with my business, but I think just as trainers and coaches in general, like so much of what we do really does impact every area of the lives of the people that we work with, right? Like, even if initially I would have thought my whole job was let's write you the program so you can get the results, like strictly in the gym. Once you start working with real people, that kind of goes out the window. Like, yeah, that's kind of a part of it, but even some of that kind of falls on the back burner where, what happens in their lives, their work, what's their relationships, all that kind of stuff. Like that's going to, number one, that's going to play into the results that they're going to be able to get with you. But on the other side, the stuff that we're doing in the gym, how is that also going to help improve every other area of their lives? So again, like even if you don't necessarily consider yourself a life coach, or the like self or personal development side of things isn't like really what you're aiming after in one way or another as a coach, we kind of do end up getting down that road regardless.
And what do you feel like? Because I think it's really interesting. I feel like as you're like, even for me, looking at phases of my focus with clients and coaching and training, plus the phases of my life, right? Like, starting out as a trainer when I was, 18, 19, 20, 21, had all the time in the world, right? So like all my focus was on the training, which is probably why my training focused on the training. And then being at a stage where it's like you have kids, time is limited, you're trying to build a business. There's all these things now in life that make you so much more like the clients that you have versus when you're a brand new young trainer. So, I mean, how do you feel like your phase of life has impacted how you approach clients in training? Because I would imagine it's probably hard to separate them entirely in your season of life plus your season of coaching, right? And how you're approaching clients. Because you talked about even just 6 months ago, and I know you've got kids that are a little older. So how has that kind of evolved for you, over the, since having kids and being at a different stage of your life, how you look at coaching and training?
I think very similar to exactly how you described it yourself, where when I started, it was a little bit older than you. I was 22, 23. But it was the same thing, if you remember, like I was a really skinny kid into our grad program. And that was after me probably gaining, 15, 20 pounds from maybe like a year before. So a lot of that was based kind of around building muscle and, in a roundabout way, like kind of gaining confidence, right? Because that's exactly what happened with me. But then, like you said, like as I continued to train different people as my interests really kind of shifted from place to place, as I started to really dive deeper into some people that really influenced me kind of along the way. Then my style of training and the things that I focused on really switched too. So, I'll give you a couple examples of some big time switches that happened just because of stuff that happened with me. So again, like when I first started out, it was really more about like in one way or another, like bodybuilding, powerlifting style, getting big, getting strong. I ended up hurting my back. So I herniated L5, S1. And then a lot of that shifted into kind of like the post-rehab mobility type stuff. Like for a long time, that was what I was known. I was known as like the mobility guy for, our small area around here.
Yep.
And then, as I started to have kids, started to really focus on growing the business, then it really started to shift into how can we get really good results with limited amounts of time. So it's, being productive and being efficient within our time. So that way, we're not demanding a ridiculous amount of time from our clients and probably potentially turning them away from not just our services, but fitness in general, because they think that's what is going to be required to see the results that they want to get. So I think those have kind of been like the big three shifts that have gone through, among probably 1,000 other mini shifts along the way.
And I know, I mean, for those that are listening or watching too, Josh and I, fortunately along the way, have had a lot of opportunities to work together. Josh was for a considerable period of time one of our instructors at the Axiom Academy. And some of you guys maybe even recognize him from the YouTube videos that are still out there circling and getting used by the new trainer world. But, I think that's a piece that's not talked about a lot. And it's also, I think, a source of even concern for a lot of new trainers getting into the industry. They're almost more concerned that because their body isn't perfect, because they have injuries, because they're going through this thing, that they're not going to be seen as the ideal trainer. When in fact, I think that's the funny part. It's like the more seasoned trainers you talk to, the more of them will say, no, like that's actually maybe your superpower. You're relatable. You can understand what they're going through. You're probably going to be more realistic with your approach towards training versus like the picturesque, 23-year-old, fully shaven, oiled up,
That
version
has
of.
never been me. So
Yeah. No, I know yours. I had the photos too. There's proof for all of us. But no, I think that it's just interesting. Right. And it's almost like a double-edged sword, I feel like, because I don't know, as I was figuring out training, and maybe you can kind of give me your take on this too. I feel like for so long I was figuring out the physical side of training, programming, like the X's and O's, that once I built my confidence there, I feel like maybe that opened me up to these other things now, to being more attentive to people. Obviously my life was changing, but I also think it's hard. It's hard for someone who's coming into training, who's already like wildly self-conscious about their training, right? Their programming, now to be able to figure out training and psychology all at the same time, right? It's really a lot to try to manage at once versus the stage you're at now where like, the X's and O's of programming have probably become one of the easier things for you. I know. And then now you've got more energy to put into that. Is that fair to say? Do you feel like there's probably something there?
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And that's, something that I've talked to a bunch of people along the way now that I have gotten into, I guess I could call it the elder age of training. But
Grandpappy.
exactly. I know it feels like it sometimes. But where it's really like, at the very beginning, and it's not even so much necessarily about, specific programs that you want to put people in, but it's really diving into the anatomy, the biomechanics, the physiology of what's happening with the body. The more that you can understand that to like a greater degree, then the less surprises that you're going to have when you get people that come in with movement deficiencies, compensations, injuries, any of that kind of stuff, because that's always going to happen. So you're going to feel more confident in being able to write them a program that's going to help make them better in whatever way that they're looking for. And so the sooner that you can really dive into that applied anatomy, biomechanics type stuff, then I think the faster that you're going to be able to work on the communication psychology side, which is where you're really probably going to end up generating a lot more change.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's, and I want to come back. I want to come back to that too, because I think that's probably been impacted, I'm going to guess, by some of the education you've done along the way and some of the routes you've gone down, even more so, since you were working with us in Axiom. But I went through, some of it going back through even some of your social media. Obviously, we've been connected for a long time. So I feel like I'm always keen on like how all of our messaging, like our messages change a little over time. And I think during the Axiom days, you were in the mobility period of your training. We even did mobility workshop together. Love that. And I think there's a lot to be had there. But I saw some stuff from you recently, and I think this relates to what you're talking about with people and all the things in their lives. The benefit of focusing on health outcomes. So specifically, I know one of the posts of yours that I came across was talking about focusing on health outcomes over weight loss. So first off, can you give us some insight for those that are listening? What's the difference? And then also too, even for clients training in the gym, how does it look different, right? Like what's the difference of focusing on health outcomes over weight loss? And, and then how does that even look different when it comes to training?
Yeah, 100%. So it's a very keen observation, I think, because that has been something that, it's probably more fairly recent, probably within the last year or so that I've really kind of made a shift into that direction. But really for me, so, for a lot of people who are coming to see a trainer or a coach, like probably 90% is going to be, they want to lose weight, right? Or they want to change their body in some sort of fashion. But when we look at the physiology, when we look at the mindset and everything that comes behind that, if you're not healthy, or at least like working towards getting healthier, then you're going to continue to put yourself behind the 8 ball with any of those results that you're looking to get. So, if you're not trying to shore up like nutritional deficiencies, if you're not working on sleep or stress behaviors that you already have, then anything that you're working on in the gym you're going to make that way harder to make improvements on that because you're not addressing these other things. So for me, getting healthy is kind of the precursor to any of the other goals that you might have. And what ends up happening is when you focus on health as opposed to weight loss or some other goal like that, then you actually end up working towards that goal anyway, because now you're covering all these bases, you're covering the foundations that are going to be required anyway. And how does that so go on?
No, I was just going to say, how does that how does that look like even in your training, right? Because I would, like we talked about before, I think oftentimes our focus is also shifted on where our focus is. And I know you're a great coach and trainer, so I know if your clients are doing it, you're doing it, so what does it look like in your training to focus on health outcomes over just, and even if it's not weight loss for you, getting hugified?
Exactly. Yeah. So, a lot of it comes down to injury prevention. I don't think, we can't prevent any and all injuries, but, as best as we can to, for lack of a better term, like kind of bulletproof our body, at least like for what's happening in the gym, because ultimately the more consistent that we can stay, the better results we're going to get. So if I can keep people coming back into the gym, then they're going to be able to see those results. So that's really kind of basis from like a training side of things. But then also too, it's, this is kind of like a mindset thing for a lot of people coming in, where the workouts for them, it shouldn't really be about the weight loss. It shouldn't be about how many calories you burn or, really trying to push yourself to like the brink of death by the end of the workout, at least like for the people that I work with.
Yeah.
It's about building some solid lean muscle, making sure that your movement is really where it should be. Techniques are on point and you can move well. If we get those boxes ticked off, then like I said before, then you're going to end up seeing the results that you want anyway, but you're going to be able to maintain that and continue that for a much longer period of time.
What are some of the challenges that you have incurred or encountered with getting clients to shift into that mindset? Because, obviously it sounds great, and I think it's amazing, but we all know how people are coming in and their expectations. So what are some of the challenges that you've encountered, right? And then how do you approach those?
I think the word that you just use is perfect, and it's expectations. So there's a saying, comparison is the thief of joy, right? I think it's actually probably a lot more like expectations are the thief of joy. So again, to use another popular quote, like, we really underestimate how much we can do like in a longer period of time, but we overestimate what we can do in short periods of time. So, it's trying to find that balance of, because people, of course, they always want to get results as fast as they possibly can. Right. So in a lot of times, like, they're not really thinking about the future or, how I'm going to feel 6 months down the road, as long as I get to where I want to be in 3 months. And so it's trying to kind of find that balance between the two, where it's like, okay, where are some areas where we can really kind of push things a little bit so I can get you to see some of the results? And then where are some of these areas that I'm going to have to pull you back so you can stay healthy, so we can keep this for a long period of time? And that's where, a lot of consistent communication back and forth between me and the clients really comes in. Because we always try and dive deeper into like the why behind why they're coming in for the workouts. But if someone's starting off just working with you, you guys don't really know each other. So they're going to hold back on that. But the longer that you work together, the more of a rapport that you're going to build, the more of a relationship you're going to build, the more that they're going to feel comfortable really kind of starting to dive deeper into some of those whys. And then we just keep using those to keep pushing into them. Like, hey, you don't want this just for these 3 months. You want to be able to keep pushing this, much further down the line. Right. So really kind of using some of those tactics and communication, like I said, like those are really going to be the big ones for me that are going to help transition that mindset or that thought process.
Yeah, and I found myself really trying to find more creative ways to give people quicker wins, right? And maybe it's not the win that they like set out for, but it's a different win that they can recognize. Feeling good leaving the gym, right? That's a simple one, but like pretty powerful one, right? Getting those positive endorphins going, feeling great. Maybe they come in, they're a little like tight and achy and they leave feeling good, and trying to point that out because like you said, it's like the bigger picture stuff's going to take time. But human psychology, right? If we can find ways to get quicker wins, then there's like just this gradual build and buy-in, even if it's like a strength thing, right? Like getting the focus to be different, which I feel like is similar as you're talking about like health outcomes, strength outcomes, right? Like it's all kind of tied together. And
Absolutely.
if I'm not mistaken, I feel like I think I came across something else even on some of your social media content too, talking about that, like, that related to fat loss, right? It's like, hey, we don't necessarily have a fat loss problem. We actually have a muscle problem, like people gaining muscle and gaining strength. And I know too, because I have so many clients who the same way. It's such a, lack of a better term. It's like it's such a mind fuck for people to understand, like, what if you could, and I think I stole this from like Don Saladino, who's like, a celebrity trainer up in New York. He's like, what if you could have the body of your dreams, but you weighed 10 pounds more? And people are like, what?
I have no idea what to do with that information.
What is that? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, again, I think you've talked about this before. Again, just knowing you for as long as I have, where a lot of people will come in with like, say, a metric that they want to achieve. Right. And again, it's almost always for the people that we work with, it's going to be the scale. The more metrics that we can track and the more metrics that we can show are improving, then the more that we're going to be able to start to get that buy-in from them, I think. So again, it's for showing them that they are winning in certain areas. And so the more they, I think we can start to broaden their horizons on what exactly they are looking at, what exactly they are tracking for, then I think that's really helping push them into the direction that we know is going to be best for them short-term and long-term. But it's one of those things like, they've got to kind of get out of their own headspace about what that really means.
Yeah. Do you have any, only because it literally before I came here to come shoot the podcast with you today, Megan and I, and for those of you guys who don't know, Megan, my wife, she's also a coach and trainer. We've actually, Josh, myself, Megan, all known each other like the same length of time. But, we were having some conversations. One of her clients was talking about, like going on Ozempic or this, whatever popular version might be out there at different times. Do you have any clients who have gone on it? And or like, how do you respond to questions about it? Because I'm going to be honest, I really lose my shit a little bit around this conversation. And I really, really struggle, right? There's one side of me that's very calm and like psychologically aware and try to, be very intuitive with clients. And then there's another part of me that just wants to smack people. So do you have any clients that have gone on it, and or have you had any conversations surrounding that with clients? Because I feel like that relates somewhat to what you're talking about with health outcomes, weight loss, people's short-term mindset.
So I do. I actually I have a few, and so it's one of those, like, for me, it's picking and choosing battles sometimes, because
Love that.
as much as we want to try and build the right habits around what people are doing, as much as we want to try and as really work within discipline and that kind of stuff, for some people, they need to see the result first. And so that's one of those battles that, it depends on the person that I'm working with, how hard I'm going to push against it, or if I'm going to be like, okay, let's work within what we have. But it's one that making sure that whoever is on it, we're trying to do it the right way, because, obviously, as that can be a very easy shortcut to getting the weight loss. So again, it comes down to, I think, a little bit of education too. And like, so what does weight loss mean as compared to fat loss, right? Because, we can cut weight, but you still won't have the body that you're really trying to achieve. So we have to make sure that we still have some of these other habits and disciplines built in. Like, you still have to be coming in the gym and lifting weights. We still have to be making sure that you're getting good quality food, especially protein and vegetables, and to make sure that you're making up for probably some of the nutrient deficiencies that you're going to be going through because you're not eating as much as you were before. So, continually trying to sympathize and empathize with their situation, while also kind of educating them on what they're going to need to get to like the ultimate results that they're actually looking for.
Yeah, I think this is why it's why I love coaching and training, because it's so diverse. Every person's different. It really forces me, and this is actually probably where having kids has been good for me, right? I really have to work to like not react, step back, think for a second, right? Because, like even with my two girls, like they both respond very differently. I can't respond the same, and so I think it's the same with clients. There's very much like an ego driven, right? There's the ego side of me that wants to like rain down fire and just smack blows to my clients. And then obviously there's the side that like, hey, like you mentioned, people need different approaches. This could be a good thing. And I think that's the tough thing as a coach over time is to go into it knowing that like, it's not about me. It's about trying to find what's going to work best for them. And everything can be a tool. Nothing's inherently evil, right? And I don't think I would have been able to do that from a maturity standpoint 10 years ago. And, day to day, I still might struggle with it as well. But no, I wanted to get your take on it, because I know I get questions about it nearly every day, whether it's from my client or another client in the gym, so hot topic.
Yeah, it really is. And, I guess kind of just finishing point on exactly what you were saying, where it's like, I think for some people, like, it can be a very good tool, because they're just going to continuously getting into these blockages of like starting and stopping with trying to get fit, trying to lose weight. And, if this is the thing that allows them to start to consistently see that, and then they decide that they can start to get into a gym and they can start actually working more on their health because they have lost that initial amount of weight, then, I don't think it's inherently bad, but I think from a more like medical society side of things, like really have to understand exactly what's happening with that and what needs to surround that in order to actually be healthier.
I like that. I like it. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on there. And my takeaway from that conversation is just that it really is probably our responsibility as people come in, they start working with us. We got to find ways to give them quick wins or even quick psychological wins, because the most motivating thing is to feel like you're making progress. And it's really demotivating to feel like you're not, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Finding exercises even that you can show that they've made progress. Like, if you see them 3 times a week, even within the first week, be like, hey, on Monday, you couldn't do like this variation of a push-up, but on Friday, look at where we are. Like, we've already made some of this progress. Like, finding just like little pieces of exercises that you can throw in there that are showing them that they're getting better. Like, that is huge in terms of just their psychology and wanting to stick with it.
I dig it. I'm going to shift gears for us for a second. So, in regards to some of the biggest influences on you, this kind of encompasses a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I feel like one thing that I have loved and respected and seen from you in the last 5+ years, right? It's actually probably been longer than that. I'm not sure, but is you really kind of diving into the details, right? We're talking about coaching. Let's go back into the details of exercise and movement, where a lot of new trainers are interested in trying to level up. I feel like you've done a great job of really diving in there and, honing in on those little details that make all the difference with an exercise, right? That's something that I've picked up from you. Where have you learned some of that? How do trainers get better with that? And I mean, you can, talk to us about any like maybe courses you've gone through or just how you've approached training. I know it's kind of a broad concept, but I do know that those little details, the little tweak of a foot or a hand or how we're pulling on something or the tension we make, it's like the light bulb that goes off for a client. So I think it's really important, but it's also hard to teach or figure out. So like, how did you start to get into some of that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the timeline that you have is probably about right. Obviously, knowing me even from years prior to that, I've really tried to dive into not necessarily research, even though that is kind of important, but who are really like top level people who are like really working on execution of exercises and execution of programs. Who are these people that I can start to pay attention to, see what they're doing, then compare that to what are the clients that I'm working with right now? Like, what are the struggles that they are dealing with? And then what are the struggles that I'm dealing with? And so how can I kind of make this triangle of, how can I fit some of the stuff that the experts that I see are doing, and how does that fit within my clients and myself? And really starting to develop a little bit like my own interpretation or take on some of that stuff from the experts, and how can I distill that to my clients that's going to make a difference for them. So that's been happening for a long time. But really, if we're looking at more recently, pre-script, like that was probably for me, like that was the biggest shift in terms of how I look at exercise and how I look at the body, just because of how much more in depth it forced me to look at the anatomy and the biomechanics. So that has been like the biggest shift for me in where my coaching has gone. And again, like, I still do the same thing. Like, I use a lot of the principles that they use within that course and how they teach the anatomy and the biomechanics. But I think it can't just be regurgitated the way that they say it, because, they work with different demographics of people. So for me, again, it's still distilling it through myself and then distilling it through my clients. And what are some of these concepts that they talk about that I can lead into my clients that is going to make sense to them and it's going to hit them at the stage of progress that they're currently in.
Yeah, and I forget the exact quote when it comes to like like learning information, like learning versus like really solidifying, mastering, there's like these different layers. For, be one thing if you just went through, right, like the Prescript program. And I think you're probably one of the first people that I had come across that were like talking about or going through. And then since then, obviously they've blown up in so many different areas and Con Ed. And so I've personally learned more about some of the individuals behind, the organization. But there's that learning, right, where you're just like, okay, I'm going to learn it, where, like you said, regurgitate. And then there's like really applying it on yourself in your own training. It's where I look at it for like the courses that we all go through, or like anyone that's listening, any continuing education stuff you're going to go through, especially if it's movement or programming based, there's going to be like learning and absorbing, which you're not going to absorb everything right away. Then there's going to be like getting out, and you got to do all of it on yourself, which I know you have, right? I think that's been the source of me seeing it in you with your content, which I love, because I think you're testing it, you're trying it. Like you mentioned, you're figuring out, how am I going to use this with my people versus just on myself? And then that third tier is like now being able to teach someone as well. Right. And so it really kind of takes time for you. Like you go through, you're learning something. I think sometimes people think like, oh, I'm going to go do this course and then right away I'm going to start using it all with my clients. And you might try some, but like oftentimes there's like this kind of like, waterfall effect. It takes a little while for it to really trickle down to your people. But that's cool.
Yeah. And that's where, I think, because I've done this before where, especially going to like the first couple like Perform Better summits that I went to, where I saw a couple things there that really resonated with me. And so when I got back on Monday, like all of my clients, all the classes that I took, that's what they did. And it's like, well, hold on, let's take a step back here. Like, one, I need to make sure that I'm actually understanding not only the actual information, but how can this be applied? And so, it's kind of like, I look at it now as like a tier system where it's like, okay, what are the things that I can take away from this right now? Because I already have some of the background knowledge that I can apply this, maybe it was a certain cue or something that I'm looking for in a movement that I can apply right away. With some of this other stuff, then I break it down into tiers. Okay, so what am I going to learn next deeper? Like, how am I going to dive into this particular subject a little bit deeper because it's dealing with a client that I have who's dealing with this particular issue, but I don't fully understand this yet. So let me dive deeper into this. And then like we keep going down in level of importance. And for me, it always is going to start with the people that I'm working with. So if it's important to them, then that's going to supersede what is important to my personal training at this stage in my career.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of keeps working down that way. So again, it's not taking what the course that you took or, the seminar that you're going to, like, it's not taking everything right away. It's making sure that you're kind of distilling that information down into what is going to be the most practical for you and the people that you work with and how you communicate.
And if you had to, like, just off the top of your head, give us like 3 to 5 names, people or organizations where, again, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are, I say new, that might be just somewhere in their first 3 to 5 years of training. Biggest influences for you, or people or places you'd recommend, like, hey, go learn from these people.
Yeah. So, again, I mentioned Prescript. So really the co-founders there, Jordan Shallow and Jordan Jinta, both of them. And then someone else that they had brought on a little bit later after they had really developed it, but Killian Hamilton. So I did a mentorship under him, and he teaches their skill acquisition course, which I think is an extremely beneficial idea to understand. So those 3 for sure, from the Prescript side. But since then, there's another company called Compound Performance. Kyle Dobbs is the one who started that. So learning from them. Also, they just look at things in a slightly different lens, I think. But, a lot of the principles that they look at it through are very similar. And then if we're sticking, just to exercise based stuff, Luca Hoshivar, I did a mentorship with him as well. And so, that group of, 5 people or so, like those are the people that I kind of look to the most. Number one, because they're continuously educating themselves and they continue to learn. So, all that information continues to get trickled down. But I also think that those people also have just a high degree of integrity in how they are really trying to help people.
Love that. I love it. Like I said, it's always a small world. Definitely Luca Hocevar, definitely somebody I have followed, pretty closely for a long time from the gym owner world back when I had the gym. And then probably even more so again recently now with, like you said, how he represents his business, someone who's just been doing it for so long, but such a student. So I love that. I think that's awesome. If you guys are listening, definitely go check those places out or those people out. Because I think that's one of the best things that probably both of us have done over time is like find these people, latch on, like literally, just suck it all out of their brain, learn as much as possible, and then figure out what's going to be stuff that you decipher into what you do too. So give me like your very short version, like dumbed down version of skill acquisition, because I think this is something that we've also kind of been teaching in the Axiom courses for a little while. And if it's the same approach I'm thinking of, I think it's an amazing thing that most new trainers aren't really taught about exercise. But give me like the dumbed down definition of what you're talking about with skill acquisition.
Yeah, so I'm going to completely butcher this from the way that Killian teaches it. So Killian, I'm sorry. But really it's how we are able to, number one, just bring in information. And then how are we able to get that to be interpreted and then represented through our movement? And so a lot of it comes down to so exercise selection is going to be huge, because you can't give someone an advanced exercise if they haven't built the foundational exercise first and done that and expressed that extremely well, technically perfect for a while. And so a lot of that comes down to, the stages of what exercise will work if someone is in a fatigue state versus a non-fatigue state, just in terms of the information that their brain is going to get from their body based on that movement, proprioception wise. So in a very short nutshell, that's kind of what that course is about, is how are you going to be able to structure, how you start a program for someone and how you develop and progress that program with them as they become more proficient in movement at the exercises and based on the goals that they have.
I like that. And for me, you're talking about it and I'm picturing, and I'm only giggling because I've seen it so many times in the gym and still see it sometimes, but you've got a client. They kind of look a little bit like a deer in the headlights. Like they want to do whatever you're telling them, but you have them doing a reverse lunge to a bicep curl to an RDL with a row. There's just so many things going on and you're giving them 12 cues and they're like, I have no, and and in the moment you're like, why can't they get it? And it's to me, it's I bring it back. It's thinking about exercises as a skill, which is it's now that I think about it and we talk about it, it makes so much sense, but no one really ever talked about it like that. I feel like when I started training that, even a squat, which seems pretty basic to a good mover, it's a skill, right? Takes practice to progress. So I love that. I think that's just such a pivotal concept that a lot of people miss out on.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to whoever actually said this, but whoever said it was, if you need more than 2 cues for an exercise, it's too advanced for the person. Which I love that. Yeah, it's probably true. If you have to give this whole bullet point list of things that you need to be paying attention to, then they're probably not ready for that particular exercise.
I dig that. Yeah, a lot of it I think falls back on what exercise are we choosing? Were they ready for it? Set them up for success. So I want to jump back into, again, I had mentioned it before when you were talking about focusing on health outcomes, but more specifically on building muscle, which is not a new trend, but I'm going to say it here on the podcast. I think this is going to be continually a growing trend. I think even in the medical research side of things, even just recently, pretty well known in the social media world, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon just came out with a book, Forever Strong. And a lot of her focus is muscle centric, right? It's a lot about building muscle, not just for aesthetics, but for longevity and health and all these other markers as well. So even for you, because I know I've experienced it with clients over time, especially those who maybe they want body composition, they want weight loss, but we're trying to shift their mentality into building building muscle, building strength. What do you do with clients when it comes to that, right? How do you, even if you know, like you and I might know you need strength training, right? Like you just need to slow down. We need to build muscle, but they might be new to strength training, right? So it's like, it's hard to go from 0 to 60. So how do you start to like ease people into that mindset shift? Because it really is a mindset shift.
This is one I'm honestly going to have to give you some hypotheticals on this,
Love it.
because at this point, it's been a long time since I have had someone come in who has had that thought process with me.
Which is
Um,
great.
just because of, I've been pointing this out to my clients and my social media for a while now.
Yeah.
So it is pretty rare that I get that particular remark from people. And this is something, we're talking about, just the way that even for us, like our mind has shifted, even from like certain terms that we use in the industry. So again, like if you would have talked to me 5 years ago, I would have never said tone or lean muscle. But again, it's bringing it back to the person that's in front of you. If those are the words that they're using, then I'm going to use them too. Like I'm not going to correct them right away and be like, no, toning is stupid. Like that's not what we're doing. Like we're building muscle.
Yeah.
But even though that's, from a coach's perspective, like we know that's what's happening, but it's using the language that they're comfortable with back to them. So that way, one, like you're not automatically shutting them down and be like, no, you're wrong. That's not, at the beginning, I don't think that's our job. It's really trying to create that rapport, create that relationship so they can trust you. And two, they already have this idea in their mind. Like, I don't want to shake that idea of what they want, because what they want is really what we're after. It's just not a term that we would use. So getting with them on, okay, if you're going to say tone, you want to tone up your arms? Cool. Let's tone up your arms. Like and these exercises will help tone up your arms and look that way. So I think it's going back into shifting like some of the language and some of the communication that we have behind it, and not just going right after them and being like,
yeah, picking an unnecessary fight.
Exactly.
If I were to sit down and talk to some of your clients and ask them, right? Because I think there's our interpretation of what we do, like what we think our role is as a personal trainer. And then there's what our clients think. And obviously over time, hopefully those coincide more, right? Because I think it means you're more in tune. But if I was to like talk to your clients and they were to tell me what they valued most about you as a personal trainer, right? All the money they pay you, they're trusting you, whatever it is. What do you think that they would tell me? What would they say about your role for them as a trainer?
I really think again, I'm having to sparse out my own thoughts behind this. But it kind of comes down to, I care. Like I really care about the results that they're getting, and I care about, how they're feeling day to day. So I care and I listen to them. Like those are, I think, the two biggest things that I get back from clients all the time. And, I think those two things probably matter way more than, especially what I used to think, which is the exercise programming and execution stuff. Like, because if you can get your people to understand and know that you're caring about their well-being as much or more than them, then that's just going to help push them to do probably more than they thought they ever could.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that, it's probably like a little bit of human nature. We're very in some ways too. And I think, even as you have kids and a family, it becomes more so we're self-sacrificial in a lot of ways. Like we're very happy to sacrifice our own health and wellness for the other people around us. And it's hard for us to prioritize ourselves. And so I think on the flip side, as a coach, just not only knowing that I have an appointment with Josh, there's like an accountability piece, but I think knowing Josh cares about what we're going to do together and he cares about where I'm going with it, they're more likely to take action. Because for some reason, sometimes like just for ourselves, it's like, it's almost not enough. Right. And so, yeah, I think I like that. I like that response. I feel like a lot of my clients would say the same too, caring, you want to see them do well, the accountability of having someone else there to help guide them along the way. I think that's huge. So, That's great. How would that different from your thoughts? You say you're like, I gotta go through my own brain a little bit, you know. Anything you would add to that from like what your thoughts about being a coach and trainer would be aside from what your clients think?
Yeah, well, and so I think, from my own perspective, I think, the education piece for me is something that is huge. And so, I always think that my clients really care that I'm continuously trying to learn and get better because it's going to benefit them. But they're not seeing everything that I'm putting into it from the education side. They're only seeing, oh, we're going to switch up how we do this one exercise this one time today. Oh, that's new. But it all is going to come back to those other things of,
They don't know how much they
caring
don't know
and
how much went into that one damn decision.
100%. Exactly.
But all good, not their role, right? They don't need to know,
That's right.
they need the outcome. All right, so I'm going to give you just one more thing here, more so like kind of shifting into lessons learned, which I think just from listening to you already, those that are with us watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, hopefully have gained some insight. And just to me, it's the psychology of training and working with clients long term and things shifting and changing. But speaking of shifting and changing, give me some insight into like what you thought you wanted to do in the fitness industry versus like what you want to do now and where you're going moving forward.
Yeah. So I came into our grad program because I had just finished my undergrad in South Carolina for phys ed. Because at that point, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to work in an office. I knew I was a baseball player. I wanted to coach baseball. Beyond that, whatever I could do to get there,
Yeah.
I'll find a way to do that. So as I kind of closed out that chapter, I realized that's not really what I wanted to do. So I came into our grad program wanting to work with athletes from a strength and conditioning side. As that program went on, and obviously with a little bit of push from you at one point, like asking me, like, "Hey, you should come personal train for a little bit." I was like, "Okay,
Come work with normal people."
yeah," and that really kind of did shift my direction, what I wanted. And so now throughout my 13-year career at this point, it's been mostly general population people that I've worked with, but I have luckily been able to work with some like younger athletes, which has been really cool. But now, my focus is, like I said, I think it's kind of moving towards like the personal development through fitness kind of thing. And, how can I help empower people to improve their lives, but through the fitness side of things that we do. So I think that's kind of been like the bigger shift for me over the course of my career.
Yeah, and I know even and I say more recently, I know you've been doing things online for a while now, so it's not like it's a brand new thing for you, but I feel like right now there's a big push for you in growing, reaching more people in the online world. For anyone who's listening that maybe they're interested or maybe I find some new trainers think they should be interested in online training. Um, give me what you like most about getting to work with clients online, and then give me the reality. Give me what you like least about training clients or trying to build this business online, just to give people some perspective from someone who's been doing it for a while.
Yeah, sure. So really I think off the top of my head, like the two biggest areas that are great are the time. Like, you can feel free to kind of work your own schedule. You don't have to meet people in person. You can get this done whenever or wherever you want to. And, kind of along with that, it gives you, can give you a bunch of freedom. The things that I'm not going to say I dislike, because I don't think I really dislike anything about it, but some of the things that were way more difficult than I kind of anticipated, especially after having such a long career already in person, was how difficult it is to get clients if you want to maintain some level of integrity in your coaching and in yourself. And really just some of like the background work that needs to be done. So building out your programs, making sure that you're checking in with your clients, making sure that you're recording videos for them, making sure that, everything that they have set up for success. There's so much background work that goes into it that the longer that I continued to do it, I was like, is this ever going to end? But it does. I promise it does. Kind of, because it's continuously being tweaked and updated.
Ongoing, right?
But yeah, so I think those are the two biggest hiccups that I've really come across from the online side of things.
I dig it. Well, I'm excited to continue to see you build that, because I know the behind the scenes challenges, right? Just like we have with Axiom of it's one thing to have a good product. It's another thing to find more people, right? And be able to work with more people, but hey, if it's worth it, it's worth it. Where can people connect with you, find you, follow you out there on the internet world?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. So it's Josh_iron_gang_Gangaware. And it's the same for TikTok. Like those two right now are kind of my most active social media sites.
Love that. Yeah. And I'll include those links in the description as well, make it easier for people to find and connect with you. But, for those that are still with us and listening, my goal on the podcast is to continue to expose you guys to just high integrity, great individuals doing a lot of different things out in the fitness industry. And that's one of the main reasons, Josh, that I had you on here, is because I know that if more people can connect with you, the world and the industry will continue to be a better place. So I appreciate you coming on, giving us some of your time, and something tells me that you'll be on in a future episode as well.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. And, obviously being a part of Axiom for a few years, I love what you guys do. And that's a big piece that I do miss doing. Schedule wise, it doesn't work with kids, but,
Yeah.
I love that you guys are really giving the platform for younger coaches to learn and grow, which is desperately needed in this industry for sure.
I love it. Well, if you guys are on here, if you guys got some value out of our podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube out of the video today with myself and Coach Josh, make sure that you click those links below, give him a follow. And if you got anybody else in your life that is trying to become a personal trainer or navigating the fitness industry, share this podcast with them. We want to help people grow. We'll see you on the next episode.